money.
Welcome to another episode of Practice Prosperity. We are joined today by Shamika Battle Packer. She is going to describe a lot of different things about social media therapy, her opinion on those things, how she relates to what she goes through on a day-to-day basis, to how she applies to her clients. And also, we always cover how she's growing her practice strategies to gain clients and to maintain clients. So we are excited for this episode. So welcome, Shamika.
Hello, everybody. I am Shamika Battle Packer. I'm a licensed professional counselor and I'm a clinical supervisor. So I help other therapists that are in the process of getting their license. I'm the owner of Giselle Counseling and I've been doing in the mental health field for more than 20 years now. So it makes me feel a little old, but I've been doing it for a little bit over 20 years. And the type of clients that I see right now, I see a lot of children. I focus on children's wellness. And like I say, you cannot work with the kids without working with the whole family, with the whole system. So I see adults and children. So I end up seeing everybody.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Before we go into it, taking the whole family approach.
Mhm.
I like that. I think you can't deal with the child if they have to go back to the parent every day. Where does that come from? That approach come from? Where did you think of that idea? When were you exposed to that concept?
So for majority of my career, even before I got my master's, I worked in community settings. And when you work in the community settings, it has a family systems approach. And so if we go back a little bit further, like even in school, you learn about family systems and how important those systems are and how we understand our world through the lens of the system. So you think about your childhood and how your childhood influenced you. So if I try to talk to you today, I might have to pull some of that childhood experiences into it. So you're always touching on the system. So then every job that I've had, I worked in the community, we're working with the system. So it just became natural. My first job after I received my master's, I moved to Atlanta. It was at a substance abuse place. And I was working with adults and I was like, oh, I don't think this is my thing. I kind of figured that substance abuse wasn't my area of that I wanted to continue to stay in. But they would have family sessions and I felt the most comfortable in those sessions. I felt more comfortable in the family sessions than I did in the individual sessions. And I was like, oh, this is my jam. This is it. This is what I love to do. And so carrying that on from every organization that I worked with after that, it was always a community setting that always brought in the family piece.
I never thought about that aspect. It's okay. One is what's most effective, but another element is what somebody's comfortable with. So I'm thinking of a practitioner who is sitting down. Can they handle sitting next to a parent and a child? Like
Mm-hmm.
that is a talent. That is an art. That is a feel thing. What are your thoughts on that? Like because that's not a natural thing. Nothing you've probably been trained on, are traditionally trained on for a licensed professional counselor.
So I think, it's what you said, like you're finding what you feel comfortable with. And in school, I navigated to that systems approach. I navigated to that family piece. And so for me, that felt the most comfortable. And then with me starting out in the community settings, I'm a very social person, so to speak. So I've always been able to network. I'm always talking to multiple people. I come from a big family. So maybe we can even say that that helped me feel more comfortable talking to families. I will say this in the beginning, starting when I didn't have children, and you would work with parents, it was very intimidating. So I always talk to people about that piece and like, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. No, I don't have any kids. I have kids now, but back then, no, I don't have any kids. However, this is what I know from my experiences, my life experiences. This is what I know from, studying because I've gone to school to study this stuff. And that helped me. Just being that honest with people helped like bring that barrier down. And people like, okay, because you have to realize they're coming to you because you're the expert. You're good at, what you do in the financial industry. I don't know nothing about that. I'm coming to you because I don't know anything about that. You're coming to me from a mental health perspective. So a lot of people, we think that they have these barriers and walls up and it could be intimidating, but really they're coming to you because you're the expert. So when I realized that, when I put it's not just about like my book knowledge, but it's about my experience too, and I'm able to offer all of that to the table. It opened the door up. It made me more comfortable.
So, because you've been practicing so long, you've seen a lot evolve as far as technology, how people interact with technology. One of the things that we had discussed is how people interact with social media when it comes to their own therapy. There's a lot of bots that do therapy. There's a lot of people talking online about therapy now. What is your take on therapy people receive online, particularly maybe on TikTok?
So, TikTok is our go-to for information now. So I don't want to knock it, but I just want to caution people that if you do, it's one thing to gather information, but you want to fact check. And so fact checking, you want to be able to do with a licensed provider. So when you're looking at, oh my gosh, this sounds like me, this sounds a lot like me, or oh, this is describing me to the T, and I think I have bipolar disorder. Okay, so if you feel like that describes you, you have bipolar, just know that that's one resource. It's just like when you're writing a paper. If you have one resource that you may get something from, but you need to source other resources to pull information to gather that. So think of social media as a tool, but it can't be your only tool. So look for a licensed professional, maybe look for other articles. Maybe you want to learn more about bipolar disorder, that's great, but also have you a licensed professional in there to give you some more information about it too. So I won't knock it because it is our way of getting information and it's a lot of resource out there, but you want to have multiple streams of resources if that makes sense.
And kind of in that vein, so everybody may not be able to have access to a therapist, um,
Mhm.
whether that's financially, maybe that's logistically, maybe it's just in that moment, I need something right now. What are
Mhm.
some alternatives you've seen people use that can give somebody some type of therapeutic relief? What are those type of activities?
So I like that word activities because that's what I would say. Once you research and you feel like, okay, I want to go back to not having access. I want to make sure that I talk about that. But once you realize that, okay, you know what? I'm feeling like I'm depressed and this really sounds like a lot like me to the T. Now let's look up resources. So you're right, activities that you can do. Maybe you can look up mindfulness activities, activities that are evidence-based that help with depression. So then you look at those resources and you're able to do those resources if you're not able to get to a therapist. So I like that you said activities because that's exactly what you want to research and look for is the activities that you're able to do to address the behavioral problems or the mental health issues that you're experiencing.
What are some of those activities that you've seen work, seen help people along? Like, what are those things that somebody can implement tomorrow that say, hey, I'm feeling better now?
I would definitely start. It just depends. Like that's a kind of a big question because it just depends on what you're experiencing because it's not going to be like a fix all, one thing fixes all things. But my go-to for a lot of stuff is mindfulness because a lot of times when you are dwelling in the past, maybe past mistakes or relationships or things that you've been through and you're kind of stuck there, that's where that depression seeps in because that's the past stuff that we're thinking about. Anxiety is when we're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Can I do this? Can I afford this? Like I'm always worrying and thinking about in the future. That's anxiety. But being in the right now is what we want to focus on. So I would say that would be my go-to thing is like looking up mindfulness strategies, how to stay present in the moment, things that you can do right now. So whether that's going outside, whether that's journaling, whether that's taking some deep breaths and bringing yourself back to the right now. But those are the tools that I would look up would be like being in the present moment, how to stay right here, right now in this moment until you can get the other resources that you need, like to find a therapist. And I was gonna say, there's so many places now that are out there that can help you. So even if you reach out, I have people that call me all the time looking for therapy. And if I can't service them, I'm gonna say, hey, check out this place, check out your community service board because they offer free services, or here's a resource, or you can call the Georgia Crisis Access Line. It's so many different opportunities for people to find those resources, but it may take you a little bit, but there are resources out there to help everybody.
I think something you said powerful is being present.
Hmm.
What is being present, and why do we have, as a society, challenge being present, staying in the moment, focusing on what you can do versus what has happened or what could happen?
So I think a lot of that is the culture of like go go go. I got a success success success. Thinking about social media and we see all these people like, "Oh, I got 1 million followers just by doing this." And, "Oh, I made $1 million." Like and so it's this culture of like, "Oh, I got to do more, do more, do more." And or I've even heard people like sleep is for the weak or, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And so this culture of like constantly having to do certain things. And so when you're doing that, I was like, I gotta think, okay, what else? What's the next big thing? Okay, I gotta prepare for this. I gotta create this. I have to do this. And you're constantly in that forward moment. And we are not being still enough. It's like we're just not being still, but that's what pushes us. It's like this culture of success, this culture of like, even sometimes our parents, what are you doing next? I've tried to really monitor how I ask kids, especially that are like in high school and are going to the next stage, like, well, what are your plans? Because sometimes they don't know. How many of us went to school and changed our major? I know I did. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And or some people get mid-career and like, oh no, I didn't want to do that. My parents wanted me to do that. And so the pressure of like having to always have this answer and just not being like, you know what, right now I'm just focusing on learning more about me and my likes and my skills. And I don't know what that future holds. But so many of us want to know, well, what you doing after school? Well, what you doing? How's your business going? Like, what are you doing to get more clients? And what are like we're constantly trying to push for that. But no, like I need to be in the right now. And I need to be like right now, I need to sit and I need to be okay with I don't have the answers. I'm okay with, you know what, right now I just need to sit in this moment and I need to feel good about myself because I haven't been feeling so good, because I don't know what the next thing is going to be. So I just need to sit still so I can learn more about myself.
Yeah, I think that's so hard. Like you said, everything around you says go, go, go. Everything around you says you should be here. And they call it in my world a lot of shoulding. People should on
Mhm.
each other all the time. This is what you should be doing. This is how much you should be posting. I think that's really tough. Um, you touched on this a little bit, but how has your family experience affected how you practice today? Like, we don't realize how a therapist processes information, what they've been through, significantly affects how they therapy and also who they attract. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. So, what is your take on that?
So my family experience is a big part of my story. So really how Just Heal was born, even the name of it, I worked in community settings. I was very comfortable where I was. I was supervising at a job and I didn't have to see a lot of, one-on-one clients. And I love what I did. I love being able to help other people and not have to do the work. Like I can give you the skills that I knew. But then we started having to do private practice. And in the midst of me taking on some clients, my mom passed. And I like to say she transitioned. And so in that space, I remember one of the doctor's appointments that we went to, she said, she had cancer, and she said, I always wondered which one of us would get it. And what she was referring to was that her mom had cancer. And so she wondered if it was going to be her, her brother, or her sister, like which one of them would get it. So at that time, okay, I hear what you're saying, but like I'm not processing what that really means. And you fast forward to she transitions. We had another death in the family. A cousin of mine was killed 2 years later, and I watched that's my aunt's son, and I watched my aunt go through that process. And she was actually going through her own journey of cancer, and she was actually going through radiation when her son was murdered. And for her to still be here, I started thinking like, wait, so my mom's mind had already told her, oh, it's me, I got to give up. I didn't realize that at that moment. But then as I'm, still in this field doing this work, I'm like, wait a minute, her mindset. So it wasn't, oh, because I would always say like she didn't eat bad and she would exercise every day. And so it wasn't just that, it was her mindset. And then spiritual, where are you? What is your spiritual connection? So that's all how Just Heal was born, because I believe that it takes mind, body, spirit, wellness in order for you to find your true healing, to get on this path of true healing. Is like all of those things need to be connected. So that's how my own family experience impacted the clients that I see, because now I can share that mindset that she had. She already said, oh, this happened to my mama, it's gonna happen to me. I was the one to get it, this happened to me. So how do we change our mind around the way that we think and we see things? Also, learning about being open to learn about my family experiences and then what they went through that shaped them, and me learning to see people in context. And so I may have this one impression of my relationship with my father and what it should have been like, but then when I understand him in context, I can understand more and learn. So that's how, and so now I'm like, wow, that was so powerful for me. I have to share this with other people. I have to be able to give that information to other people so they can learn to see people in context. And so you don't have to hold on to all of the past things that you experienced. So that's just my own, like you said, like how my family shaped the clients that I see. Like it's like I have to be able to share this information with people.
That's so real. Many times, as service providers, we go through some of the things that our clients go through, and
Hmm.
sometimes it's real time.
Hmm.
How do you recommend? It could be a financial planner having some financial event come up. It could be a therapist having some type of life event come up. How does a practitioner balance the two? You know, one minute you're giving advice saying, "Hey, do this, do that," but I'm going through the exact same thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I am honest. I always tell people I'm not your average therapist, but I am definitely honest. And I'll say, listen, I'm talking to you and talking to me at the same time. Like these are lessons that I have to learn and go through. And I often say that a lot of the clients that I see pick up on stuff that I need to work on or I'm currently working through. And I share that. Okay, this is what has worked for me so far. I've gone through similar experiences and but I'm really open. I'm just open with that because I feel like that makes me human. I'm not over here like I'm the expert and I know everything. No, like I'm human. I'm going through what you're going through or I've been through it, so I get it. And I get that, like you were saying, being present in the moment is hard. Like I have 3 kids and I homeschool and I run a business. Like how am I ever present? I have to make time to be present. And do I have the time? I can sit here and say I don't, but of course I do. I have to make the time and I get to share those real life experiences of like I get what you're going through. Let me share how I've done some similar things and then maybe you can take some of the lessons that I learned and incorporate it into your life.
So you mentioned you're juggling a lot of things. You have kids, you know, you have a partner, you have a business, a job. Like there's so many individuals I find in that space. There's
Mhm.
a lot of balls in the air, scared you're going to drop something. In the quiet times, you worry, all those things. Like, how does one balance that season of their life?
What I've learned is that if I'm not well, nobody's well. Everything is gonna fall. So I have to take time for myself. And like I was just saying, like it's hard. I can sit here and say, oh my gosh, like I don't even have time to get up in the morning. I do, but I choose to press snooze, and not wake up when I need to get up. So I have to take time for myself. So learning how to balance that, what's worked for me is acknowledging that if I don't take time for myself, I can't grow a business. I can't be there for my kids, for my spouse, for, doing all these things. But I have to put me first. And so what does that look like? What are the things that I find joy in? What are my hobbies? What am I doing for my mind in the morning? I often tell people like we get up and we'll like get our hair together, we're brushing our teeth, we're putting on our clothes. What did you do for your mind? How did you take the time? We find the time to do all those things. I guarantee you, all of us find the time to get on our phone. Oh, let me make sure I got my emails and what I got going on today. But what did you do for yourself, for your mind? Did you sit still? Did you walk outside? Did you find gratitude in something? What are your spiritual practices? How are you doing that in the morning throughout the day? And how do you find time to do that? You just have to, just like we find time to cook. We find time to go grab something to eat, if I'm running. So maybe that looks like for me is I'm turning off the radio in the car. That when I'm driving to one place to another, I'm not trying to make a phone call. I'm giving myself some time to sit with myself and be with myself. So I have to make time for myself. That's like the top priority in order to juggle all of those things. Another thing that I just started doing, and you probably know the name for this, I have to make a schedule and I have to make myself and I have to make myself stop like for 10 or 15 minutes and shift, especially if I get stuck. I am very good at like, oh, I'm gonna finish this email. Like okay, one more came through, I'm gonna do it. And now I'm pushing 2 hours. No, I have to stop myself from doing that and learning how to take a break, learning how to give myself some time. And I get way more done when I do that as opposed to me just trying to work through and do all this kind of stuff. So putting myself first and scheduling my activities for the day.
That's interesting. One thing you mentioned, you know, ride with the car with the music, with the car off. You create some might call rituals.
Hmm.
Rituals for yourself to protect yourself. I've been part of organizations where rituals are important. We do a lot of subtle things that are ritualistic, really doesn't have any value, but they have kind of long term value to keep your peace. What do you think about rituals in one's life? Whether it's I walk at this time, I do this at that time, and some people may think, well, that's so structured, that's so boxy, but kind of explain why it's important.
You, I'll say this, you have to do what works for you. So maybe a schedule may not work for me because my kids are homeschool, right? And so we do different things. I was just explaining to somebody that about putting yourself first. And she's another woman that has 4 kids, and she's struggling with a couple things. And I was telling her, like, so what you're flexible, you allow yourself to be flexible. You know that at least today you're going to walk once a day, but maybe that walking may look like at a different time every day. So I think you have to give yourself some flexibility with those rituals. But if that works for you to have if your schedule works where you can say every morning I'm getting up at this time and I'm doing X, Y, and Z, or every day I'm getting up at, at 1 o'clock, I'm going to stop everything. If you have a schedule that's okay with that, then you do that. Do what works for you. But if you can be flexible, and I'm a person that has to have the flexibility to say, okay, today I'm gonna walk. So if that looks like, hey, I'm gonna walk this morning, great. But if I have to wait until the evening time to walk because that better fits my schedule, then that's perfect too. But being flexible, I, you're right. We need the rituals in our life. We have to learn to put ourselves first because we're oftentimes, especially as you have families, we're oftentimes putting the families before our own selves. So having those rituals, doing the things that are best for you is what you want to do. But I just encourage you, if you can be structured and do it, and you can do it at every time, at a certain time every day, do that. But if you can't, be flexible with yourself. It is okay to be flexible.
I like that. Now, can we even project that even further? Rituals for our family.
Mhm.
So some people have a bedtime at a certain time. Some people do things on a Saturday. You see stuff on social media where they do a pep talk in the car before they go to school. What do you think about rituals for things outside of you that come in contact
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing, like talking about rituals, make sure that and granted, I can't say we do this every single night, but most nights during the week, we eat dinner together.
with
And
you?
at dinner, we'll pull these little cards that I just made different questions that we'll make the kids answer. We don't have cell phones at dinner. We've made that a ritual in the house. Now, when we go out to eat, I got to make that a ritual outside because, a lot of times we're busy and on our phones. But I do think that it's helpful to start incorporating that because if you teach your kids that, like as parents, kids are watching everything that we do, right? And so I may say, okay, don't be on your phone, but then I'm over here, oh, I got to check this email right quick. What is that teaching them? So I like to, if we can incorporate those rituals sooner than later, our kids learn and grow into that and begin to do those same things for themselves and then their families as they get older.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's bad. I think the no TV rule in my household growing up, that still is enacted today,
Mhm.
even though other parties may be a little reluctant to that, but I think they see the value. Now, let's get to the business side. So you decided to go into business. Why?
It just made more sense for me. I was having my second child and I did not want to put her in daycare. And I said I wanted to have the flexibility of being able to make my own schedule. When I worked for a company, I had the flexibility there as a supervisor, but it was still days that I had to go in the office. And so I didn't want to have to put her in childcare. And so I said, you know what? I had started seeing a couple clients on my own. I can do it. I know I can do it. And I just dove right in and I did it.
What were the emotions when you made that decision? Like,
Scared.
I'm going to put things in motion. I'm going to hang my shingle. I got to put my face out there. And I have to, I think people think I'm smart, but this is really going to test what they
Mhm.
think about me. Like, what were the emotions at that time?
So I was definitely scared. I am a person that change is hard. And so for me to like make that decision, I felt like I needed a lot of support, from my husband, from some of my colleagues and people that have gone out and done the same thing to to help give me that motivation to do it. My biggest fear, I guess, was probably like not having enough clients. Like I said earlier, I am a social person. So because I've been in this field for so long and worked in these communities, I felt like I had already networked. I knew a lot of the agencies, I knew who I could call to get referrals from. But it was still just that fear of like, can you really do this? Like you said, am I smart enough to pull this off? How do I know about running a business? And so I took it slow. Everything just kind of started slow for me. So I had a couple of clients already. Those clients transitioned with me. Then I got on there, I made sure like I updated my insurance information, and then those panels would send me people. I used a networking platform. Psychology Today is where a lot of therapists are. And then people found me on there, and it just kind of gradually grew to where, okay, I can do this. But I also had the support. of a spouse. So my husband was definitely a big part of that, that allowed me that space to do that.
So people say get out in the community. You need to get out in the community, and that's in finance the same thing as pay yourself first. What does that even mean? You said you were already out in the community. Can you describe some of those tasks that you were doing? Like what does community engagement look like to you?
So in the mental health field, and I'm sure in your field too, they have a lot of meetings. So I was going to a lot of community meetings. Like one was in Gwinnett, and Viewpoint is the name of it now, but Viewpoint will hold meetings for like community members. If somebody needed to staff a case and they needed resources in the community, everybody would kind of come to the table and say, okay, well, I can offer this, or this is a service that's out there that does this. And so from that meeting, you're meeting all these other people. CEU events, well, they're CE events where, we have to have a certain number of CEs per year. You're networking and meeting people. You can't be afraid to say, hey, I'm Shamika. I have a private practice in Sugar Hill. Where are you located? These are the kind of clients I see. So if you have clients and you want to send them my way, you have to be engaging. So that's what my networking or getting out in the community look like. Going to the CE events, going to community meetings, getting to know the organizations that are out there, and some foot traffic, like especially when I moved into, and you can't be afraid of that. But like I moved into the office complex, I went around to all the other businesses that were similar to mine to say, hey, this is who I am. And I didn't get some callbacks. I remember I went to the high school that's right down the street, and I tell this story now that it's maybe 5 or 6 counselors that were there, and only one of them called me back. And I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, like maybe I'm not saying the right stuff, maybe I'm not doing the right things, but you keep going, you keep pushing through that.
Talk a little bit more about that numbers game element of it. Like you're not going to see the return instantly. You're gonna, be disregarded, and you can't take it personally as far as like maybe they're just too busy. Maybe, like you said, I didn't present myself well that day. Maybe it was just not a good time in the thing. And sometimes you have to go back to the person who may, you know, for lack of a better word, push you to the side for whatever reason. Like, what is that like as a business owner? Because I don't think that's talked about enough.
Right. It's tough. It's tough because you're right. Like I had to learn not to take things personally. And that doesn't mean that I didn't. That does
Mm-hmm.
not mean that I still don't go through that process and kind of fact check what was going on. But like you just have to keep going. I'll say the example that I gave about the high school and the one counselor that called me back, it was Dr. Gway. And I went to meet with him and we sat down and we talked. And he was like, great, it's a great resource. Like, we'll be connected. I think the school year, maybe it was about to end. I can't remember the timing. And then COVID happened.
Mm.
So we just completely lost touch. That was not even, I wasn't even trying to go in person, completely lost touch. And you fast forward to maybe, I think it was in 2023. I was at a community event, so I'll vend at community events. Like the parks have stuff and where you can get information, and you again networking with a lot of people. Um, at the community event, and this guy walks up and he says, oh, like I like what you're doing. He's like, I work for Sugar Hill and we have this mentor program. I would love for you to sit down and talk with one of the guys that started it. I said, okay, well, we can meet. And so he was telling me about it. I was like, I really think that we need to pull the parents into it. And so when he walked away, I remember the organizer came over. She's like, "Oh, the mayor came and talked to you." I said, "No, it was a guy that worked for Sugar Hill." She was like, "That's the mayor of Sugar Hill." He did not say that. I had no clue. So I sat down and met with the mayor of Sugar Hill. And guess who the guy is that has this mentor program? It's Bobby Gway. It's Dr. Gway. So this guy that I met years ago, that the only one that reached out to me. And so now I do mentoring work with him where I work with the parents. And from there, again, you're meeting people, you're networking. Now we can say, okay, we have this kid and they need to come to you. So it's you want to establish those relationships. And I guess the goal of that is not having like, oh, this is gonna be a great connection. I'm gonna get all these referrals, but you just establishing those relationships in the community. And as people get to know you, as people begin to trust you, as people begin to talk to you more, then those referrals will start flowing in. But you can't expect like all of a sudden I'm about to get all of these referrals and I'm gonna have all these clients and my caseload is gonna be full. It just takes time, and that's just the nature of it. It takes time, and you just have to allow your personality to just be who you are.
Yeah, that's so hard. One person who the person called you back, but in your mind, it's like, well, I talked to five, only one called me back. And then
Hmm.
you're at this community event, and I think all business owners have been to a community event, and made the flow might not have been what you want it to be, but somehow you got that one contact, and it turned into that. It's like you almost have to have a sense of humor, a not quit process, and almost
Right.
trust the process element to it, because it's not a formula.
It's not.
It can be formulaic, but at the end of the day, like you said, it's so random that you can't even figure it out.
Mhm.
Any thoughts on the randomness of just that one client referred me to 10 people, that one referral gave me 20 clients? Like, what is
You gotta just like you said, it is about trusting that process that it is going to happen. And if you know, so this goes back to a little bit of therapy and a little bit of you sitting with yourself and being mindful and being present. When you know that this is what you're supposed to be doing and that you're in the right place and doing the right stuff, it's gonna come. And you have to learn to just trust that. If that's within you and you sat and you know that you know what this was put on me, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, then you know those connections are gonna be made. And that's that part of like that circle of control. I can't control that. I
Yep.
just this is what I can control and I have to be okay with it. And so it's therapy within itself, right? As you're going through this and I think that a lot of entrepreneurs can use a coach or a therapist to walk them through that process because it's lonely, it's hard. You say, like you say, the failures or the lack of, people, oh, this is a great connection and I'm gonna get you all these referrals and then you don't hear from them. That's disappointing. But then you have to be able to see that, you know what, though, the psychology today is still flowing through. Maybe that didn't connect, or that gave me an opportunity to say, okay, well, this was one. I had another person that came to me and she was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna talk to my son's basketball team. I'm gonna get you all your whole wellness program full. You do? Okay. Let me know. Let me know how that goes because I've been trying this for a while and she wasn't able to do it. But against that opened the door, her sister called me and her sister started services for her child. And then from that, the child is in school. And so now that's another opportunity that I can talk to them. You have to be open to being flexible. I guess that maybe that's the word, like being flexible, that it may not be this one way, like this formula. Maybe that formula to get that outcome didn't work, but it opened a door for other pieces to flow in there. And we just got to be okay with it. We got to trust that process.
Yeah, I know for me personally, it was like allow humans to be human. When
Hmm.
you think back to your own self, what are some times where I may not have followed up like I should have?
Absolutely.
What are some times where I promised X but wasn't able to deliver? And yeah, I think that entrepreneurship journey does humble you. You have to grow up real
Hmm.
fast,
Hmm.
real fast. Now, profitability is important for any business owner. So, what client avatar, a type of client, descriptions, what they do, what type of behaviors they have that are the most profitable for you? Like, what is like your ideal client that not only you can serve and do an amazing job, but also provides that balance of, well, this situation compensates me well.
So I think we had kind of talked about this a little bit before. I don't know if I got the right formula. I tell you, the right kind of client is the person that's willing to do the work. I think to me, that is definitely way more fulfilling than anything else. It's like being able to actually step in and you know that there are changes that need to be made. Maybe some areas you're stuck in, but you have some insight, but you're willing to do the work. And so financially, what that can look like, I'm not opposed to either insurance or private pay. Of course, everybody wants private pay and you want the top dollar client. I haven't tapped into that market. Some people have. I haven't. I want the consistency of people that want to do the work. So to me, I've developed a belief or developing this belief that the money will come. Everything I need is already provided for. But if I'm able to help people, that's more fulfilling to me than just getting this dollar amount, the top dollar paying client. Because those people will keep coming through the door, the people that need the help, and then the money will keep coming in.
What allows somebody to be consistent in your therapy world? Like, is it circumstances? Is it could be financial? Is it like what allows somebody to have the green light to meet with you at a pace and a frequency to provide the healing that you want to provide them?
I think just I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. You know, like that mentality, like I've got to do something different. I know that I've been trying to do this and it's not working, but I got to do something different. So the most successful people I see are the ones when you have, you know, the relationship and they come in for the session and they come back and say, "Oh, okay, I read that book or I read this article, I read, you know, I did the activity or this week I have been practicing going out more often or I have been, you know, finding things that bring me joy. I did this gratitude journal." Like the ones that are actually doing the work within the session, because the work doesn't necessarily get done in that session. It's what happens after the session. How do you take what you learned in the session or what you gathered or what you figured out, right? Because I always say I just ask the right questions. I don't do nothing. I ask the right questions to make you figure out what's going on. What do you do when you leave there? So it's the ones that do the stuff when they leave there and don't get stuck into the same routine that make the most progress.
Wow, wow. And let's say somebody's listening for whatever reason, you know, they won't be able to reach out to you as a client. Um, what can you tell them things they can do to be more consistent at home? That process, like, what is that? Is it set some free time aside? Is it, you know, review some notes or some feedback? Like, what is? How can they be effective of doing that follow up work?
So I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier, putting yourself first. So a lot of times we don't. Like if you look at most people, we get busy, work happens, life happens, and we're not taking the time for ourselves. So how to be consistent is learning to put yourself first. And when you're sitting in those quiet times, when you're learning to quiet that mind and sit still, you'll figure out the direction that you need to go. Spirit to guide you.
I like that. I like that. So you have a practice, but you also decided to become an author.
Mhm.
Where did that come from? Why did you become an author?
All right. So I told you the story of how Just Hill was born. My mom transitioned in 2008, and I was saying that my aunt's son was murdered in 2010. And so he had a 3-year-old son. And I remember his mom, you know, explaining to him what happened to dad. And I was thinking, okay, I'm a therapist. Let me find this child some books on, you know, dealing with grief. Like it has to be something out there. I found nothing that looked like him in the book. It was animals or it was people that didn't look like him. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna write my own. And that is literally how the journey started. My first book was When Daddy's Gone, A Child's Experience of Grief. Like I wrote that for my little cousin and did self-publishing and put it out there. And so it's like, okay, this can be a thing that felt really good, like having books that, you know, for people of color that look, you know, they can find themselves in the books. And from there, I wrote Just Kick Rocks because I wanted to use a name and I wanted to incorporate my mom and my cousin in the name. And so my mom was Karen, my cousin Jonathan. So JK Rocks, like Karen and Jonathan Rock, they cool. So I changed it to JK Rocks, which Jonathan Karen Rock, they're cool. And I spelled it ROX. And so that's the pseudo name is JK Rocks. And literally, as I came up with that name, I was like, oh, Just Kick Rocks. That's a book on bullying. And so then I wrote the book on bullying. And so I wanted to have these series of books that help kids address those issues or help parents, you know, make that not, I don't want to say softer, but allowed a space for them to be able to talk about these heavy topics with kids in a way that they're not talking about their experience, but their experience is mirrored in this book. And so from my own experiences, you know, how I felt about death, you know, thinking about myself when, you know, I was 6 years old and lost my grandparents and what that felt like or what I saw and then nobody talked to me about, like making sure I incorporated those experiences because I feel like those are some universal experiences that kids go through. And so that's how the books were born. And, you know, I started to do one on racial inequality, like explaining that to kids. I have one, me and my son wrote a funny one. It's called, oh gosh. How did I draw a blank on my own book? But it was when a new kid is introduced into the family. So when I had my daughter, the surprising side, thank you,
Mhm.
the surprising side. And so it was a funny book that me and my son wrote when I had my daughter. So that's kind of the only non-serious book, but it again it opens the door for talking about and introducing like when you have a new sibling because I know what it was like when me and my sister are 9 years apart and I was mad when my mama had this baby coming to the house. And so it's this funny book to allow kids to talk about that. But But that's how the journey started, is through having a place for my little cousin Dejan. I was like, I gotta give him a book, that he can read and see himself in and be able to talk about how he feels about, his dad not being here anymore.
Wow, wow. So two things come to mind. One is a little bit off topic. I watched a lecture. I think it's Mr. Rogers speaking to Congress. He was speaking about how nowadays a lot of cartoons are depicting. He was trying to get funding for public broadcasting. A lot of cartoons are depicting animals, figurines, and stuff like that. As you mentioned in your conversation, you wanted something to depict something that looks like them. Do you
Mhm.
have any thoughts on the over animalification of cartoons and things of animals to the point where now people love their pets more than people? Like, what is your feelings on that? I'm curious.
I think initially, like that was like you said, that was the reason behind me writing the book, because I was like, I need to see myself. He needs to see himself in the book, and not because I can't relate to an animal. Animals make it fun, they make it soft and comforting. And I get why people use that, because people like pets, they like animals, they like, but I need to see myself. That what resonates with me. I know with my kids, I want them to see themselves and not like see an animal. So I don't know why people do it. I would just guess that it's because it's fun and it's soft. It the same thing I'm trying to do with the book is like having a space for you to be able to talk about those emotions without coming to the child. Well, how do you feel? Like, how does that make you feel that daddy's gone? Like, I can talk through it through the book. And I guess that's what they're doing with animals, like I say, because it's softer. But I like people, please.
Another thing that you touched on is having real conversations.
Hmm.
I hear this term a lot: let kids be kids, and try to preserve their innocence.
Hmm.
What is your thoughts on that? Because for me, from my perspective, I feel like we let kids be kids too long, and the truth does not, in my opinion, necessarily take away innocence.
Hmm.
You're talking about real topics: grief, child, family growing, loss. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I'm on the side of let's be honest and real with kids as soon as possible. What are your thoughts?
It's our environment. They are exposed to so much information and so many things. And so, yes, children, you have to monitor how you talk to them about certain topics. I would talk to my 14-year-old different than how I would explain things to my 3-year-old. But I think that I can still explain death to both of them, if that makes sense. So I think that because they're exposed to it. And from my own childhood experiences, it was to stay in a child's place, don't ask the questions. That didn't work for me because I had so many questions and I didn't understand. And then what do you do developmentally as a child? You're going to your friends trying to figure out the answers. Like, no, like you should talk to an adult, have an adult explain to you about what that means, about what death means, about what sex is if that comes up. But you have to have the age appropriate language. So I think that to me is having the age appropriate language to explain things, because kids are exposed and then they're going to schools, they're in communities, they're in groups, like they're exposed to different elements that another child, may have the full version for. But if you're talking to your kid about this, it's not a shocker. It's not like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that, I don't understand, and now I'm afraid to ask my parents. I've opened this door to have the open communication because we talked about these topics in the environment that are happening around them. So I definitely think kids need to be kids. Absolutely. I don't want to tell my 3-year-old, well, let me tell you how you really have a baby and what really happens. No. But my 14-year-old, absolutely, we need to have that conversation. The 3-year-old, I can talk about, maybe reproductive organs, and I can use it in a way that's language appropriate for him to understand, and using the correct word for the genitals. Like I can talk about things that are age appropriate, but not in the same way that I would talk to that older kid about.
Makes sense. Early in this conversation, you spoke highly of your partner as far as he's one of the reasons that has kind of helped you with your business. Speak on what is it like to date a business owner, and were you guys dating before you were in business? Was it in the middle? Like, what is it like being a partner to somebody who has to go through that process of getting out in the communities, being rejected, all those things?
So neither one of us were business owners when we got together. We both became business owners probably around the same time,
Mhm.
which was heavy. Because we're both navigating this new world and finances especially, that was tight. That's a whole nother conversation on how to navigate finances as an entrepreneur, and both of y'all are entrepreneurs. But how we did it, I you just have to have open communication, and I've learned that I have to what I did do in the beginning was he was a support financially for me to do that. I tried not to weigh heavy on him all of the ins and outs, because a lot of my business he may not get because this isn't his field, right? And so it becomes like, "Oh, you're always complaining," as opposed to somebody who is in the business and who understands, like, in this world. And I can talk to other therapists that are entrepreneurs. What I did was I had a couple of friends. I had a friend that owned some salons, a cousin that was opening up, his wife is an optometrist, somebody else that was doing, I think she had like the IV injections, and we made a group. And so we would get together and we would talk about the nuances of like having a business and stuff. So it gave me an outlet on the outside of him. And so he was still that support for me, but it wasn't like full fledged. I'm talking to you all the time about the ins and outs of what's going on. And the same for him. He drives trucks. And so when he started that whole process, he has other friends that are owner operators, and they talk about stuff too. And yes, I get some of those nuances of that and that I don't always understand, but it's not solely on me. And so I think that that's what's kind of helped us, is that I've had that outside support. And then also, like, I had the clinician. So I also, it's a couple other therapists that are entrepreneurs that we'll talk to every now and again. And we used to meet more regularly than we do, especially in the beginning. But I have that support that I can say, you know what, I don't need to take all this to him. Let me put it over here. So, like, having those networks of people, because this can be lonely. And it could be, especially as when I speak of private practice and it's just me in the office, right? Before I got the other clinicians there or people renting out the space, it was just me. And so that's lonely when I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this client? Or is this the right thing? Or what document do I need? Like, I need a support system around that space. So I would say recommend, yes, your spouse can be a big support, but you also want to have outside support that understand the area that you're working in, and then entrepreneurship in general, to be able to talk about the nuances of how to grow and, different ideas that they may have that you hadn't thought of.
I think that's big. Your partner can't be your lover and your primary business coach.
No, no.
That's going to dry things up real fast,
Right.
if that is the case. Now, how did you pitch the idea that you wanted to go into business? Like, how did that go over? Y'all are used to living a certain lifestyle, earning a certain amount of income. You're paying for X, he's paying for Y, and for a period of time that may not happen. So, like, how do you have that conversation with the partner that you desire to go out on your own?
So it started before I just did it, right? So when we decided to have the second child, we began to have that conversation of what this looks like and being on the same page of, okay, I don't want to do daycare. This is how much daycare would cost. This is how much income, like, we started having those conversations way before it happened. And so it allowed that prep time to say, okay, I can support you. I'm there. I got you. You go ahead and get started. How long do you think it's going to take you to build up? Okay, I'm thinking about 6 months or so. Okay, I got you. Like, let's make this happen. So the conversation started well before the journey happened, and plus I was, you get out of place, especially working in some companies. The climate was different. The climate had been different for like a couple years. And so he had heard about like that. And it's like, okay, you don't like it there. I get it. Like, you want to do something different. Let's figure out how to supplement that income. So the conversation had already started. So I feel like having that open communication and you talking about, okay, this is what I'm able to do. And even like that may be a part of like looking at those numbers. Like, this is how much I would make. This is what I'm making now. And this is how much they're taking from what I could make. And this is how much I can make on my own. But I just need a little cushion. So having that conversation well ahead of time before you just jump out and do it. Open communication. That's probably the biggest thing with a lot of couples is not, being scared to have that open, honest communication.
Stuff. Now, but he also had to have that conversation with you at some point, saying, "Hey, babe, you're out on your own. I want some of that. Uh, I want to go independent. how did he sell you on that? How did that manifest itself?
Conversations. It started because I think I've always had this mindset of being on my own. Like I've seen it around me. Like my dad is an entrepreneur. I've had, uncles that are entrepreneurs. And so that's kind of been around in my area. A couple friends, their moms run different businesses. So like I've known, but like being scared to step out. So when he had to have the conversation with me. He was like, man, I've been talking to these guys and they say they can do this, this, and this is how much they're making. And I'm like, yeah, but anybody, he's like, no, they're showing me, this is what it is. I'm like, yeah, but anybody can tell you. So we started looking at numbers. And then as we both kind of started researching, like when he would tell me stuff, I'm like, well, let me see and let me research a little bit too. And so then it's like, oh yeah, if you cut out the middleman, like of course you can make more money. It makes more sense. And so then having somebody in his field that knew how to get the contracts and knew, okay, man, I can bring you on and I can help you do this, and this is how much you can make. Or if you lease on, put your truck on here. Like I started understanding more about his field and knew, like, okay, let me trust this process. And I think that I'll say something else. It goes to, I had to trust him. I had to trust that he knew what he was doing and he got it. And hey, I'm not gonna sit here and lie and be like, I just trusted him and I just knew. No, I was like, wait, are you sure? Because I don't care. It took me a minute, but like once I like understood it myself, I was able to trust that, you know what? Out of my control. He got this. I gotta trust that he got it and he knows what he's doing, just like he has to trust that I got this and I know what I'm doing.
Like, where did that come from? Because there's a natural kind of mama bear mentality of we need to pay for these kids, and I'm out on my own. Some needs to be stable. Um, like that's hard.
Hmm.
What do you think that came from? One that you went out on your own, so you knew we would survive and eat. Where did that come from? Because some people may not be having it.
I don't know. I just think I had to it was both of us were at a point where we were, where it was like, we just got to try it. And
Yeah.
if it don't work, I just remember, and maybe this goes back to that family thing, right? My mom told me when I went to school, because I was all about wanting to stay, in my hometown, because I was in a relationship and I thought this was it. She was like, listen, you gonna go to school and you gonna meet so many people. And she was like, at least go off to school. You can always come back home, but just go experience it and you can come back. So I think that same mentality of just do it. You can always come back. You got a career. You can always come back to a job, but just try it and see. So I think a part of that too was pushing it. Like, let's just do it. Let's just get out here. Let's just try it. What's the worst that can happen? We just have to go back. You have to go back to a company. You have to lease back onto a company. That's the worst that can happen. So why not try it and see? When we had a plan like that, I knew that where I left, my grandmother taught me that, like, don't leave no job. What's the saying? Oh my gosh, I can't think of it right now. But basically, don't leave no job like without, don't piss them off when you leave there. You leave on good terms. And so if I'm leaving on good terms, I can always go back if I need to. Like the door was open. And so why not try it? What was the hardest? That was the hardest thing, was just stepping out and doing it, because I have a career, I have something, I have a place that I can fall back on. The same for him. So I think that that piece of that family piece of what was ingrained in me, it really showed when that time came. Like I just had to do it.
Now, being honest,
Mhm.
what lifestyle things did you have to cut initially when both of you guys went on your own? Like, what was the hardest thing to drop? Where it's like, man, I'm this age and I'm used to XYZ, so I want XYZ. Was it not going to Whole Foods anymore? Was it not getting the premium pedicure all the time? Like, what was that?
So a lot of that was cut out. I probably didn't get a pedicure until like this year. Like, and I've been in business. But no, like the one thing I think that was cut was the travel. Like I like to go places and do stuff, and a lot of that I couldn't. And I was mad and I was upset because I'm seeing people moving around doing stuff, and I want my kids exposed. And and that was something that had to put on hold for a long time because that was a big expense. Other than that, I feel like we figured it out.
Yeah.
Like it's, I think a part of that mindset of like the money will come, and we figured out how to make things work. It's been some struggles, but we eating out is probably one of our biggest things where, we stopped doing that and learn how to cook a little bit more at home. Um, But I would say travel and maybe eating out would be the second thing that I had to like put aside. I wasn't like big on like nails, hair, all that kind of stuff. So that didn't matter to me if I couldn't do that, but it was mostly travel or doing stuff. Like especially a lot of my family is not here. So then it's like, oh, we're going here, we're doing this. And I'm like, I can't go this time. Such and such graduated, we going on a cruise. I can't do it. Like we can't, we got a big family now. I can't do it. So a lot of that. Yeah.
On a side note, what did you learn to cook that's amazing now?
My husband cooks. Like I don't know. He
Must
cooks.
be nice.
He cooks because so we will grill a lot. What we learned to do was like on Sundays, he would grill like a lot of the meat. And so then during the week it becomes easy to put stuff together. So I can't say I learned to do. I had like at one point, one of the other therapists that's an entrepreneur that I would talk to, one of my good friends, she was sending me like these one pot meals. And so I did that for a long time where it was quicker and easier to cook these one pot meals. Like so it might be like if you do chicken fajita and you put everything in a pot, cook it. And so all I had to do was get the tortillas and maybe if I made black beans or something like that. That was my thing. I mean, I can cook, don't get me wrong. I can cook, but like he does most of the cooking. So his grilling and all of that stuff is what he does. And so we just do that we made it a thing. And what helped us too, we would do like family. I have some family here, and so we would do like family meals. And so where, if we were to host house, we would cook the meats and everybody else would bring the vegetables. And so you have a lot left over from that. So that helped too. And it helped to be in communion with other people. So that worked.
Some people are just so lucky. Some people. All right. Any advice that you'll give to a young practice owner thinking about starting their practice? Anything you say, look out for this, think about that?
Consult. Do not just jump out there and do it. Talk to people and ask them like what are some things that work for them, what didn't work, what would they do differently? Like really get to understand it before you just jump out. I hear a lot of people, especially like people in grad school, they say like, oh, their goal is to have their own private practice. I'm like, slow down. This was like, some years in the making before I even stepped out to do it. I learned a lot in the field. So I would definitely say the one thing you want to do is be able to consult with a lot of people.
Like that, like that. Now, this is where I take my medicine. Based off the clients that you see, where do
Mhm.
you feel like financial advisors have an opportunity or just missing when it comes to helping people with money?
I think people need that introductory education on financial management. I feel a lot of us, I was talking to somebody yesterday and she was debating about this trip and she was like, well, I'm just gonna put on my card. And I was like, do you want to charge a trip or is that something you want to save up for? So I think that, like I say, the beginning of like understanding money, I don't think that I understood money. I watched my mom say, I don't have, I don't have, I don't have, but then I always had stuff. So I watched my grandmother have all these credit cards, but like nobody explained to me what that was. So I feel like we need to understand the financial responsibility. I think I shared with you before. Starting my business with both of us, we use our money, like learning how to leverage, business credit as opposed to personal credit. Like learning I would do things so differently, if I had to start over. So I think that having just the baseline education of financial management and having somebody in their corner where they can see the benefit of like learning and understanding financial skills. I didn't hear it from my mama. I didn't hear it from my uncle that would say, "Oh, you don't need to do that. You don't need to spend that. You don't need to go here." I know. Yes, I do. Like, yes, I am, but having a financial advisor or a financial management person to be able to explain, no, let me show you. Let me show you what you can do with your money. Like if you do this now, this is how it can grow. I think that's beneficial. So having that introductory educational kind of I guess concept or explanation to people is what's important.
Awesome. I love that explanation. So, well, first of all, thank you very much, Shamika
Welcome.
Battle Packer, licensed professional counselor. I think what you shared is real, it's authentic, going into business for yourself, getting out in the community, taking a holistic family approach. I'm hoping a lot of therapists hear this and give them the confidence to say, yes, we can. So, thank
Mhm.
you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Mhm.
Feeling the pressure? You're not alone. I'm Randall Lavery with Deasil Wealth Management, and I specialize in simplifying wealth for those who are near retirement and business owners. We'll create a plan that fits your unique needs so you can actually enjoy the wealth that you built. We consider our firm results driven with a touch of fun. Ready for clarity? Click the Learn More and schedule your free discovery call. Let's build the financial future together.
The more I know, the more money I can make.